Hey everyone, it's Eric Glazer, and we are recording here at Health2047, and I'm excited to bring to you a really unique guest to the show. We're going to share a bunch of bright spots. We're going to talk about how the AMA is driving innovation in healthcare through their, should I say, venture capital firm?
Venture Studios.
Venture Studios. It's called Health2047. Am I saying that right? And here to kind of give us all of this great information is Warren Templeton. He's the managing director there at Health2047. And so, Warren, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And we were talking before we turned on the mics here. Let's talk about what the purpose of the organization is. High level, maybe a little bit of the origin behind it. And then let's connect your personal story to how you landed there. And then we'll get into a little bit of the cool things you guys are doing.
Sounds great. So thanks for having me. So Health2047 was founded in 2016 by the American Medical Association. We really started around this idea that there's a lot of really hard and gnarly problems in healthcare, and to really transform where not only the kind of industry is going, but also transforming, the relationship between the patient and the physician. There really need to be some new ways to fund and back new businesses, playing in maybe non-conventional areas. So we've got a great portfolio. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We've largely wrap that around this idea that the best way to make that impact is at the earliest stages. So pre-seed and seed, which is where we, work with founders largely coming from science-based backgrounds. So whether that's research, technology, or physicians themselves. And we wrap those founders with whatever services or requirements or whatever capabilities are lacking in their area of expertise. So oftentimes that's commercial strategy, that's clinical billing capabilities, et cetera. And then we've got a seed fund that then can carry them on to hopefully later stages of investment.
And how do you get the physicians and the AMA sort of fingerprint and expertise involved in these decisions and in these organizations that you're going to back?
So we have three pillars that we are inherited from the American Medical Association. The first one is in physician productivity. How do we enhance the role and the actions of the physician within workflow? Chronic disease and chronic disease management. So there's a lot of great work that's being done here at the show floor, and we've done some work in the past in our own portfolio, and just trying to help chronic disease. It's the biggest cost item in healthcare. And then the last is data liquidity or data access. Still a problem even nearly 10 years after we were founded. A lot of opportunity both in AI, but also in the access within the data itself. Ironically, APIs are still not consistently accessible for moving health information around.
Okay, so provider productivity. Did you say chronic disease or cardiometabolic specifically?
Chronic disease.
Chronic disease, and then data access.
Correct.
Those are your three.
So those are the three main things that drive our investment theses. Now there should be the things that are relevant to physicians by way of our House of Delegates at the AMA, et cetera. But in a more practical set of terms, right? We have physicians on our team who are kind of asking those questions about workflow integration, about value generated within every physician's work set of activities. And then the last one is then we often advise setting up kind of physician councils, et cetera, particularly where there's hardcore science or medicine involved.
So you're not you're not making a decision yay or nay on investment opportunities without the provider's voice involved. Okay, so what's your role specifically as an MD there? Not an MD, but an MD, managing director, because you're not a physician. And then let's talk about, so let's cover that and then let's talk about your background.
Yeah, sounds good. So I'm a managing director and my focus is really on commercial strategy. So at the end of the day, most of healthcare that we're looking to back has science basis to it. That is not my area of expertise, but where I do bring value, I hope, is that we're trying to help those businesses identify who's the segment you're going after, what's the pathways in order to sell or advance that product, what is that product that's going to translate, thoughtfully into workflow, and then, how do we price and get that into market? And so that's predominantly what I end up working with a lot of our founders on. And we get to do that, whether that's an official engagement. So maybe we've invested in something, or sometimes we don't end up getting to the investment phase, but I'm love to advise and work with startups.
Okay. And what's your background that brought you there? And because you've been with the organization since basically its inception, which was back in 2016 or
Correct,
so, right?
Yeah.
So where did you come from?
So I was fortunate. I spent 11 years in investment banking. I built trading systems, high frequency trading systems, et cetera. Really got my teeth cut on early, machine learning, et cetera. But I had this kind of like crisis of what is this what I want to be doing with the rest of my life? Had a moment to go do my MBA at the University of Virginia. And got a great opportunity to work with Fitbit for a while doing M&A. Saw the friction that was happening between healthcare and technology. And I said, I don't really want to be on the strategic side. I want to be more on the execution side. And, this opportunity, kind of landed in my lap by circumstances. And I joined really to lead product when we were really more of a pure play venture studio. We evolved after learning much more about the cost of doing that, but also some of the challenges of getting those businesses over funding humps, et cetera, that we were going to work more in this collaborative approach that we do today.
What would you say? So I like this, and I'm sure you have colleagues with similar, what we call business and investment background, combined with the AMA's expertise and brain gain from them. What makes the fund unique when comparing to other funds out there and other investment and we didn't call it a fund. Sorry. What did you call it again? A
venture studio.
Venture studio. So there's a lot of venture studios and incubators out there in our industry. What's a little bit about what makes you guys different in your mind? And then we'll talk about your strategy and how you invest in an incubator.
So I think first and foremost, we're mission driven in the sense that we talked about the pillars earlier. Those drive all of our strategy and investment. We'd like to make IRR, but at the end of the day, we're really looking at this from how do we impact healthcare? And so what that normally means is that, if we're on your board or we're advising you, if you're one of our portfolio companies, we're in it for the impact in the long run. We happen to be very I wish we were, I hope to be able to say we're very successful. We haven't had any exits yet. But the goal with all of this is that our journey should be consistent with the founder achieving the goals that they came to us with that original vision on. And, that's what we hope to be representing on those businesses as, advisors and board members.
Okay. I want to double click on that for a moment, because you hit on something that I personally believe contributes to some of the inefficiencies that we have in an industry. And that is when we have VC funded startups, there tends to be a pretty high pressure for a 5 to 7 year, some sort of liquidity event, which doesn't really play in healthcare. It really doesn't. You need to have a lot of patience. It needs to be a longer term, almost an infrastructure like patience in healthcare, in my opinion. And so that sounds like a little bit of how you're approaching things, which is definitely different from a lot of the firms I've talked to.
Yeah. So I think going alongside that kind of long-term vision, it's also knowing that, look, healthcare returns normally are 7 to 10 years, which buffs the traditional 5 to 7. Our fund, if you want to call it that, is evergreen. So we have return requirements, but they're not like, you're not racing up against some deadline. I think on the kind of infrastructure comment, one of the things that I talked to a lot of our founders about, which is this, where there is friction in the market, and it's probably a healthy friction, by the way, which is we have an expectation of growth, but there's also as commercial growth happens, you're also getting like sticky customers, et cetera. Healthcare doesn't generate a lot of churn normally. And so, your growth might look linear and lumpy, but it definitely doesn't necessarily look J-curve. There will be the odd duck out, but, that's amazing growth of those companies. But there are amazing businesses here and across the industry that are probably growing at linear, and that should be okay. And maybe there are alternative investment models, revenue that can help cover that. Those are the kinds of things we would love to find partners in, who are looking at healthcare from that lens.
Okay. So let's get in the hot air balloon. Let's go up about, I don't know how far high up those guys go. And let's look at the whole healthcare landscape from an incubator perspective and talk about some of the problems you guys are looking to solve, and in doing so, the companies that you've recently decided to support and build.
Yeah. So I'll start with Zing, who I hear was a recent guest on your show here. So Zing Health is a managed Medicare plan out of the Midwest. We, back in 2019, 2020, were really interested in the fact that, look, value-based care was growing. There were gaps in social demographics where it was harder to get access to certain plans, et cetera. And so we were really fortunate to run into and kind of talk to Dr. Whitaker, who said, look, I've got a slightly more SDOH point of view on how not only we can customize a Medicare plan for underserved communities, but then scale that in a meaningful way. And so, we worked and partnered with Dr. Whitaker for the seed investment. He went on to raise in quick succession an A round that included Village Capital, and then about a year later, closed PE capital from New Light. And so what you'll find is that, Village has a mission-driven investment thesis. New Light has kind of a mission and a returns investment thesis. And so we were able to kind of not only partner with that team, but then help them grow. I helped run digital marketing for their first AEP, which was a eye-opening exercise as well. So it goes to demonstrate kind of some of the work that we do in terms of, pinch hitting in as executives on teams.
Okay, so we've got MA for underserved, gap, founder comes to you, we incubate it, we're now Series A, and then whatever that PE round we'll call it, which I know some of that was designed for to cover the reserves and everything. Correct. How do you, tell me if this slows down your CEOs or your founders, when they're raising after the seed round, are we trying to find investors that have the same like-mindedness of your organization? Like if Health2047 is in it for the long haul, and thinking 10 years plus, are we making sure Village Capital, I don't want to pick on them specifically, but anyone that's going to come in an A round for any of your portfolio companies, we have to make sure that they have the same mindset, or do we have to just change the timeline now?
I think it's a little bit of both. Look, it's hard to be pick and choosy sometimes. Ideally, you want to have, and this goes like across the industry, you want to have investors who share your ideals, hopefully, and where you're headed. Not that revenue can change, but that we've got plenty of businesses where investors are more IRR focused, and yes, we have that conflict. But that's a healthy conflict with the CEO, or in terms of achieving strategic goals while also preparing yourself for the next fundraise, because a lot of fundraising activity still means you need to hit certain ARR targets, you need to hit certain customer targets, et cetera.
Right. Okay. Makes sense. And tell me now, let's cover a couple of other problems you're trying to solve with and some of the other portfolio companies you have under your umbrella.
So we backed a company early on called its name is irrelevant, actually. We backed an early business that was doing diabetes prevention. At the same time, Omada was growing. We had this insight that, hey, we should be doing more work on the ground. What we learned from that, and that ended up not being very successful, but it translated into, obesity is a really hard disease to manage. It's also really hard for physicians to figure out what courses of action without kind of escalating to surgery, et cetera. And so what we did was we said, hey, who's working in this space? We bumped into the team at the Mayo Clinic who were saying, hey, we've got a lot of research that's been driven from our own encounters with obese patients. And now we're doing insights within that content. Is there an opportunity to scale this outside? And so we partnered with the Mayo Clinic and built a company called Phenomics Health. These guys are doing obesity phenotyping. So they've kind of qualified about 4 different phenotypes. There are more hopefully coming. And their test is really about helping people get on, whether it's the right GLP-1, the right gastric bypass, et cetera. It also happens we were all right place, right time for the GLP-1 explosion, but also just more broadly, like obesity is still a problem in this country, and getting people to the right care pathways is critical. They've raised capital from us, from Mayo Ventures. We're part of that, and then there's been a number of other strategics who've gotten involved in that deal.
So I love that story for a number of different reasons. One, it was born out of a failure, which I think is so right. Failures aren't failures; they're just opportunities to learn.
Correct.
Sounds like you. That's fantastic. Love that story. Second, I think that and I don't know what you're seeing in the sort of the phenotyping personalization space, but we've been talking about personalized medicine and right, and diagnostics to that end for a long time right now. So tell me a little bit more about the science behind obesity phenotyping and why you guys think you're in a position to actually make a true impact with an or I should say this, create a product that's truly efficacious.
Yeah. So, I mean, obesity on its outside, if you treat it all as the same disease, but people have different receptors, different actions that they take to address it. The desire of personalized medicine is extremely costly, and I wish it would scale because we'd be able to kind of really get into the nitty gritty, but it doesn't scale very well. And so phenotyping, whether that's in obesity or there'll be others that are going to emerge. I think this is a really, really important space for healthcare to move towards, because with most other industries, we've actually been able to get to what is the problem and where is that problem occurring? And that's just kind of not necessarily, healthcare can do it. It's just very expensive. So, the underlying kind of science is it's AI over top of genetics testing, and there's some behavioral quizzes, et cetera, that are also done alongside that, which then gives this kind of clarity in terms of where backed by science, where the obesity is emergent from, and what receptors will be most compelling in terms of impacting that patient's obesity care.
Wild. Love it. Talk to me about, give me one more, as I know we're running out of time here. So give me one more.
Yeah. So we've got another one, Scholar RX. They're an educational business. So think first aid for care workers, really globally. This was born from some of the original authors of first aid books, and we were look. The AMA has always had an educational capability. Largely, that educational capability has been for physicians, and this was a wonderful opportunity to partner with somebody who had high conviction in not only how care is delivered, but then how you enable tertiary care in the wild. And we're excited that those guys have announced partnership with the WHO and some global impact that they're going to be doing. But this was a kind of a non-traditional investment area. I'm not sure that there's going to be a huge sprint into education in healthcare on the back of this, but it is a business that we're excited about the impact. We'll be announcing the number of lives they're going to be impacting later, but with the WHO, that's a great accelerator.
It's First Aid RX. Did I get that right? No,
it's called Scholar RX.
Scholar RX. Sorry about that. Wild. All right. Do you have a bonus for me, or should we stay there? Because I have another couple of questions for you.
Why don't we move on?
Okay, great. So let's talk about I want to get back to the investment strategy, right?
Yeah.
We just talked about a Medicare Advantage plan. We talked about a obesity phenotyping company, and we talked about a I'm going to call it a tertiary care enablement company. It's sexier than education, and that's what it's doing, right? So how do you balance this tension when you're looking at opportunities between a breakthrough technology or breakthrough idea versus this practical implementation and commercial viability, which sits over in your neck of the woods, your area of expertise? How do you help your founders stay grounded, ensuring that these solutions actually create measurable value or clinical impact?
That's a great question. I think the first thing that we do is we work with founders who have a level of humility and conviction to a problem. I don't think we would back a founder who didn't have that. And so that usually is self-policing and giving, those companies at least goals and directions. The second is that, impact is one of the things we report on internally. And that's coming from those founders and those founding teams. So not only are they having to, manage those KPIs, but they're also having to help us understand what they're doing. And then I think lastly, and probably most importantly, is that sitting on a board is that's the official pathway, but we all know that most great advice and great work is done, at the executive level. And so one we're advising the executive teams. We're stepping in to help them on those journeys, whether that's, hey, you know, there's a product, you got a product gap here, or you've got a billing gap here, your financial strategies, you know, needing to kind of like step up the game, et cetera. We're not just saying, hey, go do that. We're also putting people in place. And so I think we're supporting our founders in that journey, and then hopefully giving them the opportunity to not only meet us where we want to have mission, but also to achieve those goals from a, you know, long-term strategy.
Okay, I want to unpack some of that. You talked about the founders. Humility and conviction. I want to ask you something about that. Then you talked about impact reporting, and then obviously you guys are hands-on as far as advising your executive teams. Those are the key three things to enabling your investments are going to go well and make an impact in life. When you said humility, I understand conviction of a founder. What do you mean by humility?
So we're in a learning business, right? Healthcare fundamentally is all about learning. It's called practice. Like you go see a physician at a practice because technically we're all still learning. And so I think high conviction with humility means that, look, you can listen to the market. You can listen to what physicians are saying, and maybe there's a pivot. Maybe you've got to change something about your business, or, hey, no, I actually have listened to enough folks and I can stand up for myself. But it's not about the founder necessarily that we're looking for that has the ability to do all the jobs in that business. We don't expect, in fact, you know, that statistically you want to have more than one founder on a team anyway. But that's not the type of, you know, person we need. We want somebody who's got that capability and the ability to learn.
Great. And for impact reporting, you mean what? Because I'm almost trying to get a sense of how do I decide? How does Warren and his team decide we're gonna take a bet on this founder and this idea?
Yeah, so our decision making is commercial. Well, it's mission, then commercial, and then but you got to have KPIs associated with both. So, you know, commercial, everybody can talk about EBITDA or, you know, number of ARR, et cetera. On the mission side, we try to work with our founders to kind of generate what are the one or two KPIs that you'd be proud of reporting in your company's journey. And those should be lives impacted. They could be tertiary care people impacted. There's a variety of those types of things that we take internally. And hopefully that starts to build this kind of like story of we're amplifying not only the AMA's mission and goals, but we can talk about the number of people who are then benefiting from that.
Sure. So KPIs that provide an aligned North Star for the AMA and everything they're trying to do through Health2047.
Correct.
Anything else that you want to talk about here in the last minute or two that I haven't asked you about? Or are you? I don't want to leave anything on the table here.
I mean, I think, look, we've got a lot of exciting growth areas. AI is kind of embedded in everything. So, you know, coming to me saying, hey, I got another AI thing, that's not what we're going to get excited about. What we are going to get really excited about is, look, I've got a unique application of AI. I've solved a workflow issue. I happen to use AI. Maybe I've strung together a number of deterministic things. So things behave like maybe more of an LLM, et cetera, to have positive deterministic or transparent outcomes. And that's a lot of the fun that we're working on and looking for founders. And then, you know, how that then translates into, you know, whether that's, physician productivity, you know, as an asset class, right? But also, direct care.
Love it. Where can people find you, find out more about Health2047?
So health2047.com, and then you can find me largely on LinkedIn.
Okay, and which is Warren Templeton.
That's right.
MD, Managing Director.
Managing Director.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Warren. This was a lot of fun. For all of you listening, thank you for tuning in. We don't take the time you spend with us lightly, and we hope you use the ideas, the insights that Warren provided today to inspire your thinking and apply some of those ideas and strategies at your organization. If you're a founder, now you know where to find Warren. And we just want to remind everyone, we produce this show for you. This is your Bright Spots in Healthcare podcast.